Hi, welcome to our channel of ignou audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Social Sciences, SOSS, Master's Degree Programs, MA in Psychology, MAPC, Second Year, MPCE 0 to 3 Interventions in Counseling, Block-3 Other Counseling Interventions, Unit-2 Psychodynamic Couples, Counseling 2.0 Introduction. This unit focuses on couples counseling. Initially, we discussed the psychodynamic and psychoanalytic approach to counseling and then on to couple counseling. We then discuss how psychoanalysis is used in marriage counseling and family counseling. This is followed by object relations theory, which is one of the methods by which couples counseling used to be given. Here we discuss how the couple's subsystem is considered for such counseling purpose. The next issue taken up is marriage counseling, and it is differentiated from family counseling. The dynamics underlying marriage counseling are put forth, and the uniqueness of couples' problems are discussed. Then the counseling session as such is taken up, and the stages in couples counseling sessions are described in detail. The importance of sexual counseling is then presented, which is followed by the dealing with couples having domestic violence and mental illness. 2.1 Objectives. After completing this unit, you will be able to define and describe couples counseling, explain the psychodynamic approach to couple counseling, describe object relations theory as applied to couple counseling, define and describe marriage counseling, elucidate the various aspects involved in marriage counseling, describe the various stages in couple counseling, explain the importance of sexual counseling, and analyze the techniques involved in working with couples having mental illness. 2.2 Psychodynamic approach to counseling. Psychodynamic approach originates from Freud's work on the id, ego and superego, which are three parts of our psyche. While id is impulsive and wants its needs to be gratified immediately, the ego, which is the conscious self of us, tries to find ways and means to gratify the needs in the most realistic manner. The superego, however, is the moral arm which is also in the subconscious and acts as a mediator of the id's basic desires to make the ego find a solution that is socially acceptable and healthy. Freud's psychoanalysis is a holistic approach that looks not only at the here and now but also the past experiences and materials repressed in the unconscious. In the psychoanalytic therapy, an attempt is made to uncover the memories repressed in the unconscious in a controlled environment. This is done through the medium of client-therapist relationship, which is a trusting relationship. Psychodynamic and psychoanalytic approaches began to extend their approach to include a family orientation in couples counseling in the late 1940s. The work of Nathan Ackerman, 1958, was especially important in focusing the attention of psychoanalysis on family units. Before Ackerman, psychoanalysts had purposely excluded family members from the treatment of individual clients for fear that family involvement would be disruptive. Ackerman applied psychoanalytic practices to the treatment of families. Later on in couples counseling, the psychodynamic therapy was used for couple and associated family members. 2.2.1 Psychoanalytic theory versus psychodynamic theory. Although the two terms psychoanalytic and psychodynamic are often used interchangeably, yet the term psychodynamic is the broader of the two. This term includes the underlying processes, feeling, ideas, impulses, drives, etc., which influence much of overt behavior. These underlying processes are often not at the conscious level, and that humans frequently use defense mechanisms to keep anxiety-provoking feelings, ideas, and impulses out of conscious awareness. Theories that are psychodynamic in nature may or may not be psychoanalytic. Robbins, 1989 in Gelso, 1995. psychoanalysis is the most intensive and depth-oriented form of therapeutic intervention. Sessions occur usually between 3 and 5 times a week, and analysis is virtually always long-term. Length of treatment is typically from 3 or 7 years. Analysis is carried out by a certified psychoanalyst, who after completion of MPhil or doctoral degree in psychology receives several years of additional training in psychoanalysis from one of the many psychoanalytic training institutes. The client's main task is to free associate, that is, to say whatever comes to mind without editing or trying to formulate intellectually the meaning of dreams. Analysts believe that dreams provide a powerful way of accessing the client's unconscious. The analyst's task throughout the analysis is to be non-interfering, to offer what Freud called as hovering attention, and to make interpretations of the emerging material from the client that makes sense to him or her. These interpretations should be as close to the client's level of awareness and experience as possible, or else if they become too far removed from what the client is feeling, the treatment can become a sterile, intellectual exercise during the course of analysis. As the client continues to free associate and the analyst carries out the tasks discussed above, the client naturally regresses in his or her associations. That is, the client's associations and memories continually move backward in time. As this happens, the client gets more and more into the childhood conflicts and issues that form the fabric from which the present problems derive. Also, as this occurs, transference reactions continue to develop and build. It must be remembered that transferences are by definition distortions of the analyst. Transference is a repetition of past conflicts with significant others, displacing feelings, behaviors, and attitudes belonging rightfully in those earlier relationships onto the analyst or therapist. In psychoanalysis, the key to helping the client resolve neurotic conflicts resides in providing insight into the distortions involved in the transference. As the transference intensifies, the analyst maintains his or her ambiguity and neutrality, and this permits the continuing unfolding of these projections. The cure in analysis occurs as the transferences are repeatedly interpreted, worked through, and resolved. The analyst's timing in offering interpretations is crucial. As the transference is worked through, the client develops deep insight into how his or her early conflicts caused him or her to distort and misperceive the self and others. The client's defenses become reduced so that he or she can lead a better life. Again, the aim of analysis is this depth insight, most centrally of the client's hidden needs and issues, as manifested in the transference. The working through the transferences in analysis deeply and positively affects the client's relations with others as well as with the self. It results in deep-seated changes in personality structure. 2.3 Psychodynamic marriage couple. Counselling. Psychoanalysis concentrates on individuals rather than social systems such as the families. An initial goal of psychodynamic family counseling is to change the personalities of family members so that they can work with one another in a healthy and productive way. Nichols and Schwartz, 1991, pointed out that psychodynamic counselors who follow Ackerman most often employ an eclectic mix of psychoanalytic and systems concepts. A unique contribution that psychodynamic counselors have made to family counseling is the use of object relations as a primary emphasis in treatment. Object relations are internalized residues of early parent-child interactions. In dysfunctional families, object relations continue to exert a negative influence in the present interpersonal relationships. Dysfunctional families are those with a greater degree of unconscious, unresolved conflict or loss. Hall and Paul, 1975. Three main ways of working with these families are I. Developing a stronger parent coalition, 2. Defining and maintaining generation boundaries, and 3. Modeling sex-linked roles, Walsh, 1982. Overall, psychodynamic family couple counselors concentrate on helping family members obtain insight and resolve family of origin conflict or losses, eliminating distorted projection, reconstructing relationships, and promoting individual and family growth. 2.3.1 Psychoanalytic Marriage Counseling. Psychoanalytically based marriage counseling is based on the theory of object relations, which addresses how relationships are developed across the generations. Objects are significant others in one's environment, such as a mother with whom children form an interactive emotional bond. Preferences for certain objects as opposed to others are developed early in parent-child interactions. Individuals bring these unconscious forces into marriage relationships. To help the marriage, the counselor focuses with each partner on obtaining emotional insight into early parent-child relationships. The treatment process may be both individual and conjoint. In the process, the counselor uses the process of transference, where each partner restructure internally based perceptions of, expectation of, and reactions to self and other and projects them onto the counselor. Other techniques include taking individual history of each partner and a history of the marriage relationship. Interpretation, dream work, and an analysis of resistance are often incorporated into the treatment. Baruth and Haber, 1984. Catharsis, the expression of pent-up emotions, is a must. The goal of this approach is for individuals and couple to gain new insights into their lives and change their behaviors. 2.3.2 Psychoanalytic family therapy. Although the psychoanalytic family therapy tends to be more active and directive than the psychoanalytic individual therapy, this treatment is clearly non-directive in comparison to other family couple approaches.
In this therapy, the therapist listens a great deal, and although this listening is very active, he or she is relatively quiet. Interpretation is the primary technique used in this approach. One of the important aspects in these therapies is the transference that is encouraged, which helps a great deal both in terms of catharsis and also developing of insight into one's own dynamics of behaviors. This transference is not only between the therapist and the client but also amongst family members and couples. In this technique, transference specially to the therapist is less intense than in individual therapy. Both the real and transference reactions between and among other family members divert some of the energy ordinarily invested in the individual therapist. The psychoanalytic family therapist usually prefers to work with families in a long-term format than is obtained in other approaches. The goal is personality change in individual members of the family. 2.4 Object relation theory. In this theory, objects refer to others in the family that is other than one's own self. Within the couples and family therapy domain, the major current theory of this nature is called object relations theory. In contrast to classic Freudian psychoanalysis, which focuses on biologically based drives revolving around sex and aggression, object relations theory posits an innate human need for relationships. In fact, object relations theory consists of two aspects, viz. I. The psychoanalytic study of the origin and nature of interpersonal relationship, e. The intrapsychic structures that grow out of past relationships and remain to influence the present interpersonal relations. It is well known that from birth on, the human being seeks sustaining relationships with significant others, especially with mother and father in early life. In the bringing up of children, parents do commit a large number of mistakes, of which some are relatively more frustrating to the growing person. According to the psychodynamic approach, if this frustration is too high during the early stages, the individual will repress the same, and these frustrations and disappointments etc. will start appearing at a later stage in the individual's life. The important aspect in couples therapy is that these needs show themselves in the choice of and behavior toward love objects, and in terms of one's strengths and weaknesses as a parent. At the core of this object relations theory is the manner in which the early relationships are internalized or incorporated by the person, and how the person carries the same in terms of representations of early love objects such as parents. In fact, these representations serve as blueprint of sorts for subsequent relationships. The internal object representations profoundly affect the choice of subsequent love objects, behavior toward those persons, and perceptions of the objects. It must be understood that the internal representations only partly correspond to reality and they are always affected by the individual's existing needs and drives. 2.4.1 Object Relation Theory and Couple Subsystem. Although object relations therapists do work with the entire families and various family subsystems, it is important to note that most analytic work involves the couple subsystem. Some of the most fascinating object relations theory has recently been developed on how material patterns choose each other and respond to each other in a way that matches the internal representations of early objects, such as mother and father. The concept of projective identification is used by most object relations therapists as a key to the troubled interactions of members of a couple and related family members. When using this defense, the person unconsciously projects hidden feelings and ideas, which in turn reflect hidden object representations from childhood onto the spouse or other significant object. The person not only projects hidden parts of the self onto others but then identifies with those parts because these are, after all, part of the self. In couples and family interactions, projective identification, ordinarily a complex concept, is even more complicated. The object, in this context let us say spouse, takes on these projections and then acts them out. For example, let us say in the child's earliest experience the concerned object did not provide the needed nurturance. Such child then sees rejection and hostility in his wife even when it is not present in reality. Significantly, the wife takes in this projection and acts out the role of the hostile, rejecting object. To carry this example further, the wife, too, has her internal object representations. For example, the cool, distancing father introject. She may project these into her husband, and he may in turn act them out. 2.5 Marriage counseling. Couples seek marriage counseling for a wide variety of reasons, including finances, children, fidelity, communication, and compatibility. Regardless of who initiates the request, it is crucial that the counselor sees both members of the couple from the beginning. Trying to treat one spouse alone for even 1 or 2 sessions increases the other spouse's resistance to counseling and his or her anxiety. Moreover, if one of a couple tries to change without the knowledge or support of the other, conflict is bound to ensue. After both partners have decided to enter marriage counseling, the counselor may take a variety of approaches. 5 of the main approaches are psychoanalytic, social learning, born family systems approach, structural strategic approach, and the rational emotive approach. 2.5.1 Marriage, couple counseling versus family counseling. Marriage counseling and individual counseling share a number of assumptions. For instance, both recognize the importance the family plays in the life of the individual, and both focus on problem behaviors and conflicts between the individual and the environment. A difference is that individual counseling usually treats the person outside his or her family, whereas marriage or family counseling generally includes the involvement of other family members. Further, marriage and family counseling works at resolving issues within the family as way of helping individual members better cope with the environment. 2.5.2 Dynamics underlying marriage counseling. The emphasis in marriage and family counseling is generally on process, dynamics, as opposed to content, linear causality. In other words, the dynamics behind marriage and family counseling generally differ from the individual and group therapy. In making the transition from an individual perspective to a family orientation, Reznikov, 1981, stresses specific questions that the counselor should ask themselves in order to understand family functioning and dynamics in the case of couple or family counseling. The few questions are given below. Filled circle: what repetitive, non-productive sequences are noticeable? Filled circle: what is the basic feeling state in the family, and who carries it? Filled circle: what individual roles reinforce family resistance, and what are that most prevalent family defenses? Filled circle: how are family members differentiated from one another, and what are the subgroup, couple boundaries? Filled circle: what part of the life cycle is the family, couple experiencing, and what are its problem-solving methods? 2.5.3 The uniqueness of each couple's problem. Couple problems are usually composed of a complex mixture of ingredients which make up a whole that is individual and idiosyncratic. The component parts include each partner's own personal history and character, history of the relationship, and the attendant circumstances at the time of presentation. Most couple, by the time they seek counseling, are aware of the existence of a problem in their relationship and may have had recourse to various forms of assistance. They have often tapped their own problem-solving skills. The specific advice of relative and of other professional, especially general practitioner, has commonly been sought. They may have read the general advice of newspaper columnists and other authors. The existence of the problem may well have made the couple receptive to such advice, and they may be keen to experiment with a variety of solutions. The solutions arrived at from a course of counseling will be the product of an average of 8 hours of energetic interpersonal interaction between the 2 or 3 individuals in the counseling room. It will typically be reinforced by at least an equal amount of time spent by each of the individuals reflecting on the process or engaged in related tasks. In the process, considerable time would have been devoted to the couple's problem in a highly concentrated manner. 2.5.4 Defining the couple problem, where a couple present a problem which they regard as common, or where one partner presents a problem which he or she wishes to work on as couple problem, the situation is comparatively simple. The only factor that might inhibit exploratory work would be if some aspects of one individual's behavior or pathology suggested to the counselor that it would be irresponsible to begin couple work without first ensuring that the immediate symptoms were addressed. For example, one partner may be clearly suffering from acute mental illness, or actively suicidal or threatening to severely harm others. In the most extreme cases, severe individual pathology might prevent couple counseling ever being possible. However, such cases are very rare. Firstly, even if the symptom is clearly affecting one partner more than the other, exploration may help mobilize both partners' helping capacity.
It clarifies the joint aspects to the problem and to what extent it may be an individual one. It may also allow the partner who is less affected to explore whether his or her remedial action are truly helpful. Partners can often perpetuate rather than help an individual problem. Both partners may also find it helpful to explore the impact of the problem on the relationship and to vent some of their feelings caused by the problem, as for example, frustration or sadness. 2.6 Stages in couple counseling. There are certain stages in couple counseling which are given below. A 3-stage model of counseling has been proposed. Stage 1 Exploration, Stage 2 Understanding. Stage 3 Action. 2.6.1 Stage 1 Exploration. This is best achieved by a non-judgmental empathetic approach and by use of the techniques of active listening, and so these skills are carefully taught and their importance emphasized. However, there are a number of tasks which do need to be addressed in the exploration phase. Firstly, the client needs to be informed broadly of the nature of the service that is being given to them. As for confidentiality, they must know up to what limits it can be implemented, as there may be something at some time to be conveyed to another professional treating the same person for some other referral. An initial contract needs to be made along with informed consent. Some basic information needs to be taken and a brief summary of the problem should be obtained. This is termed as the intake procedure. Once this has been done, any clear signs that have become apparent to indicate that the clients have other pressing therapeutic needs are addressed. Also, assessment of appropriate depth is used, and where needed a referral is made where there are no indications of any other problem or disturbance. Counseling begins and assessment progresses gradually during the initial exploration as the presenting problem is discussed. Both the counselor and the clients get more chance to examine the problem and to experience the reality of working together. During this process, the counselor will be using her skills to promote the formation of a therapeutic alliance with the clients. This process will typically take from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the complexity of the client's situation and the ease of relationship with the counselor. Steps under Stage 1 Exploration. A. Intake and assessment, usually general, detailed where necessary. B. Initial exploration. C. Formation of therapeutic alliance. D. Ongoing examination of presenting problem. E. Contracting for further work. Details of the exploration stage includes the following: specifying or crystallizing the help that clients want with their problem, the duration of the problem that has persisted, precipitating and aggravating factors that perpetuate the problem, current major life issues, how the partners interact together, the couple's social and cultural context, each partner's physical and mental health, both now and in the past, each partner's family experience, legal proceedings in hand, other helpers or agencies involved, significant interactions concerning the couple that are not apparent, significant third parties' involvement in the relationship. 2.6.2 Stage 2. Understanding particular patterns and struggles that a couple are having can be illuminated in part by looking back to earlier relationships and how these were experienced. In this, the psychodynamic position is considered. It is believed that relationships that conform to certain patterns do so not only out of conscious choice, but also due to the past experiences where many attitudes, feelings and behaviors have not been examined but taken as routine. Notions of what behavior is acceptable and unacceptable, what roles are proper and improper, what emotions are to be welcomed or avoided, would have all been part of this unexamined aspects which are at the unconscious level. The memories of this type from the unconscious emerge through transference, which is created at times deliberately by the therapist or happens spontaneously as the client uninhibitedly expresses all suppressed and repressed feeling to the therapist. Counselor. Transference means the following. To give an example, let us say the client had felt angry towards the spouse on a certain matter in the past and could have expressed the anger physically or verbally. During the counseling session, the client treats the therapist counselor almost as if it was his or her spouse and transfers all those anger and hostility onto the counselor. This is called transference. This happens at the unconscious level, and the client is not aware that he or she is transferring those feelings and emotions of the past that was felt towards the spouse onto the counselor. The counselor or the therapist on his part identifies and uses this transference in explaining to the client about what kinds of feelings they were and why those feelings were present, and thus provides an insight into the client's behavior as to why she behaved as they did, and this insight regarding the cause for one's behavior makes the client understand and give up that behavior. Thus, the therapist or the counselor explains how thoughts and feelings that are not conscious can influence our new relationships. To give a totally different example, let us say that someone who has been consistently bullied in the past may approach another with a timid demeanor, expecting to be hurt. However, he may become pleasantly surprised to find that he is not bullied. In some cases, there is no correspondence, and either no relationship ensues or a new relationship is created which breaks the patterns of the past relationships. This kind of situation can arise in the case of client-therapist relationships also. For instance, clients frequently produce similar reactions in a counselor who finds that she feels a pressure to adapt her behavior and thinking. It is a powerful and significant process where couple relationships are involved. The process will be happening on both sides, and the resulting relationship will be all the more powerful as each person corresponds to the other's conscious and unconscious expectations. While we have understood what transference is and how it emerges and how it is handled by the counselor in the counseling session to develop insight into the client, there is also countertransference that may emerge which needs to be recognized. Countertransference is a reaction of the counselor to the client's transference. Sometimes it is a conscious reaction to the observed behavior of the client, and sometimes it may be also an unconscious reaction to the felt and not consciously understood behavior of the client. 2.6.3 Stage 3 Action. For many clients, an understanding of their problem is enough and they are able to modify their behavior appropriately. Others need to engage actively in new behaviors to consolidate the understanding and to allow change to take place. Therefore, this third stage of counseling is concerned with the action that will be taken as a result of the understanding gained by the counselor and the clients in the previous stage. Some of these actions are for the clients to use in order to begin to develop a new way of looking at themselves and their relationships. Other actions represent new ways of interacting in which the active interventions are aimed at encouraging clients to see how the present reality differs from their assumptions about it. This in turn allows them to form a more objective and agreed view of the situation. They are thus able to channelize their energies into creating new patterns of relating which takes objectively the factors that exist in the present situation instead of glossing over it. Some of the techniques used in this regard includes I. Communication, 2. Genogram, and 3. Sculpting. Let us take up each of these and discuss. I. Communication. When a relationship has become problematic and partners have become distanced from one another, it is a clear indication that there is a communication problem. It also indicates that one has to re-establish or recreate adequate and appropriate communication between the partners. The encouragement of active communication is an extremely effective way by which this problem can be reversed, and each partner can be encouraged to begin to re-engage with the other and re-examine the unconscious preconceptions which have replaced active interaction. 2. Use of genogram. Another technique that is useful in this context is the use of genogram. This is a diagram which represents the family of the couple in the form of a tree. This diagram includes the parents of the couple, their siblings, previous relationships, and their children. On this family tree, significant events and interactions are presented. A careful and sympathetic exploration of genogram with clients allows them to take account of attitudes, experiences, and beliefs which have been with the clients since birth, and they get to know how these have influenced their understanding of the present situation in ways of which they are not consciously aware. 3. Sculpting. The third technique is sculpting. This is a further development of the genogram, which allows a visual representation of a family system to be made using simple objects such as stones, coins, or buttons. It is the client's choice as to how to represent particular individuals and how to depict their closeness or distance from each other. This technique provides a powerful visual tool for representing situation as well as assumptions of which they were previously unaware. This technique is also remarkably effective in allowing clients to see the difference between their perception of the situation and their partner's perception.
Another important tool used in couples counseling is the transactional analysis, TA. In particular, the ego state model from TA allows clients to distinguish between their tendencies to act as a child, or as an adult, or as a parent. The child and parent roles are both linked to the client's past, whereas the adult role is entirely concerned with dealing with the present reality. This technique encourages clients to distinguish between what is part of the present situation and what predates it. A great part of the value of this tool is its accessibility to the clients. 2.6.4 Important steps in action. Summarizing this involves summarizing the themes and reflecting back what has been said to help clarify some of the issues that seem at odds with one another. It encourages the clients to thoughtfully challenge each other. It also encourages the couple to question the strong family belief that have never been acknowledged by either of them. Introducing unacknowledged feelings. The counselor may well become aware of a feeling that the clients might be denying. Simply sharing the feelings in the room and assuming that the counselor judges it to be close enough to the client's consciousness to be meaningful to them may help clients gain new insights. pointing out the discrepancies. When the discrepancies between verbal and non-verbal language between the couple are pointed out, it helps in a big way. This is so because neither of the partners may be aware of behaving in such a manner. Clients may say that they are angry but smile as they say it, conversely, verbalize something benign in a different tone. Challenging clients for action. Most important of the techniques is to have the trust of the clients before challenging them for action. The aim of challenging is to focus on discrepancies in thoughts, feelings and behaviors that become apparent during the exploring and understanding stages. 2.7 Sexual counseling. When considering the various areas of couple relationship, sexuality is clearly an important part. Sexuality is as amenable to the three-stage model of exploration as any other aspect of couple's life. However, because of the unique importance of this area in any couple relationship and the tendency for it to be inadequately dealt with, owing to embarrassment on the part of either the couple or the counselor, there is a need for excellent training of the counselors, who can ask questions in related matters and help couple adequately. In this context, it is worth noting that Jack Anon, a clinical psychologist working at the University of Honolulu, devised and amplified a version of the model to describe various levels of help with sexual difficulties. This is known as PLISSIT. P equals permission, exploration, LI equals limited information, understanding, SS equals specific suggestions, action. It equals intensive therapy. Let us take up each of the above and discuss in detail to understand their significance. 2.7.1 Importance for permission. One has many assumptions in regard to sexual matters which are given below. Hence, it is important that before sexual indulgence, the concerned partners must take permission from the other so that sex is natural and spontaneous. Some of the assumptions are: filled circle. Men are always ready for sex. Filled circle do not show affection to a man, he will expect sex. Filled circle performance is what counts for men. Filled circle there is something wrong with a man who has a lower sex drive than his partner. Filled circle you must orgasm together. Filled circle men should know all about sex. Filled circle women expect men to know about sex. Filled circle women must wait for men to initiate. Filled circle all gay men are promiscuous. Filled circle a large penis stimulate more than a small one. Filled circle men must take charge of sex. Filled circle having sex always ends in orgasm. Filled circle good sex always ends in orgasm. Filled circle good sex means the man always must have an erection. Filled circle most gay and lesbian partners adopt an active or passive position in their sexual relationship. 2.7.2 Importance for limited information. Information about sex is readily available, but it can be misunderstood in the simplest way by the myths and taboos we have mentioned. It is not only the content that has to be absorbed but also the way the information is processed. Not many people have been able to ask for clear, honest sexual information and received an equally honest response. In sexual counseling, this is what is encouraged between the couple. The counselor will check how much the clients do know during the exploration stage. The counselor herself or himself must have a good working knowledge of the anatomy and physiology of sexuality. 2.7.3 Importance for specific suggestions. Some clients may need more than permission and information. They may benefit from suggestions about how they can make changes in attitudes and behaviors as a result of their new understanding. It may start with exploring their own body in order to examine their own self-image. It may be touching and talking exercises or rethinking positions for intercourse. The tasks are better discussed in session so that they are manageable and achievable. It is vital that the counselor appreciates the difference between behavioral tasks in sexual therapy and sexual counseling. 2.7.4 Importance for intensive therapy. Psychosexual therapy is a treatment plan to remove a specific dysfunction, while sexual counseling facilitates the sexual communication and understanding between the couple. Psychosexual therapy should not be attempted by the counselor unless qualified. Inappropriate task setting will have negative results, as in general couple counseling. The couple will feel further failure and be less inclined to start again. In therapy, if the counselor finds that even simple tasks given to the couple is not being managed and there is considerable difficulty, then the counselor has to rethink and replan the therapy program. Probably it may require further exploration of more underlying emotional issues which have to be probed further and understood, or where necessary to refer the couple to some other expert to overcome neurological or author-related problems. 2.8 Couples and domestic violence, mental illness. 2.8.1 Domestic violence. Where ongoing domestic violence exists, the first priority is to address what steps can be taken to end the violence. Counseling may be one, but so also the individual therapy, separation, and legal restraints. Social control is sometimes necessary to stop violence, as violence is a criminal act for which legal sanctions are appropriate. Counseling should not become a diversion from this. Therefore, it is important not to offer counseling if legal action is in process. In other cases, a careful assessment is needed initially to ascertain the following points. Filled circle tracking actual arguments in detail. Filled circle considering how the couple behave when they are separate and when they are together. Filled circle looking at the couple's history with a view to understanding how issues of gender difference, power and control were handled. This kind of work can be very powerful, and it is important that when the counselor is concentrating on one partner, the other does not feel neglected, as this may recall previous life experiences of neglect. Therefore, the counselor needs to acknowledge this possibility and allow it to be voiced if need be. Similar feelings of abandonment may well arise when the couple separate rather than become involved in violence, and these feelings need to be normalized. Work is done with the perpetrator to emphasize that he has the choice as to whether to be violent or non-violent and has exercised this choice in the past. This allows him to acknowledge that violence is not an integral part of the person, and this allows the individual to regain dignity and control. Similarly, emphasis is placed on challenging the notion of being provoked, emphasizing that the perpetrator has the choice of whether or not to respond. Once the perpetrator has understood this, he is freed of the feeling that he must have control over his partner to have control of his own life. 2.8.2 Principles to work with mentally ill clients. Mental illness is a phenomenon for which there exists formulated medical diagnostic and remedial practice. Couple counseling is unlikely to have a curative effect on mental illness apart from on mild reactive conditions. Resolving couples' problems and increasing their relationship skills may result in benefits to their general mental well-being. Once the presence of an illness is noted and understood, great care needs to be taken to assess what work, if any, is possible and to ensure any work that is undertaken is appropriately focused and that it does not increase clients' distress by inducing confusion or anxiety. Care needs to be taken to ensure that clients with severe mental disturbance are recognized and if possible directed to an appropriate source for help. 2.8.3 Intention of suicide by a partner. The clients may have a variety of reasons for expressing an intention to commit suicide during the time they are going through counseling sessions with a therapist or counselor. One should not ignore the overt threat if mentioned by either of the partners. It would be ideal for the counselor to help the concerned partner to express him or herself and vent their feelings as to why they consider such extreme step. The counselor's work must focus on to engage the client in a non-suicide pact. At best, this is a promise from the client to do him or herself no harm. This non-suicide pact could be for a fixed period of time, e.g. during the initial counseling contract or until this marriage problem is resolved or until the next session. At the minimum, there should be a firmly expressed hope on the counselor's part that the client will take care of him or herself. Once the session is over, the counselor will need to make prompt contact with a family member or even the spouse to allow to share the deep ambivalent feelings that clients threatening suicide can engender and to consider further action in regard to the same. It is important that the counselors should be aware of such suicidal threats and should exercise particular vigilance when there is a suggestion of suicidal intent. The couple therapy is a sensitive issue to tackle. Whatever form of therapy one may use, it is important to note that the partners may be from different background and culture, and thus to make them both see eye to eye on various conflicting issues will be rather difficult. There might also be communication problems. Each partner may have different personalities and habits. Also, there may be family issues which may affect the couple relationship. Whatever approach the counselor uses, the couple therapy needs training and knowledge, and it is very much challenging for the counselor himself. 2.9 Summary. In this unit, we learnt about couples counseling and the various issues related to the same. The counseling techniques based on psychoanalysis and psychodynamic factors were taken up and discussed. It was then applied to couples counseling, and the various steps in regard to couple counseling were delineated and discussed. A discussion regarding how to consider the couple in session as a subsystem and how to apply the object relations theory to the same was then taken up. Marriage counseling was described and differentiated from family counseling. The various dynamics underlying marriage counseling was then discussed in detail. The problems of the couple was then taken up and showed the uniqueness of such problems as related to each couple. Then we defined couple's problem and put forward the method to define the same. The next aspect was couple counseling as such, and the 3 important stages of couple counseling were discussed in detail. We then pointed out the importance and significance of sexual counseling and the various techniques to handle the same. While dealing with couples counseling, it is also important to deal with domestic violence, which brings the couple to counseling. Also, many times the conflicts between the couple may arise due to one of the partners or both suffering from mental illness. In this unit, we tried to see how such cases could be effectively handled. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.